The Los Angeles Rams had a really surprising 2023 season after having an abysmal 2022 season. A lot of their young guys like Kyren Williams and Byron Young stepped up, and some of their rookies like Puka Nacua and Kobe Turner ended up being some of the best players on the entire roster. It was a really good time for them to have a good draft class. We also saw the resurgence in the coaching of Sean McVay and the play of Matthew Stafford by a long shot. He looked really bad in 22 when he wasn't injured, and then in 2023 he looked almost like his old self again. And the Rams, despite losing, they lost in the playoffs and the divisional round, and they honestly aren't that far off from a championship run. Now, looking at their offseason, they have a couple early round picks, a lot of late round picks, and $27.7 million in cap space, with only a few notable free agents to re-sign. They're in a really prime spot with their slight window, because a lot of their guys are in their young 30s and only getting older, and obviously Matthew Stafford's almost 40 years old already. So in this tight window of winning opportunity, I think these moves will make the Rams win a Super Bowl. So first up here, we're going to be looking at our releases. First, we have Brian Allen, which will be clearing $4.9 million. I think he's just basically a backup center. That $5 million could be used elsewhere, and we could find a replaceable center, a backup center. Second, we'll be replacing tight end Hunter Long. He doesn't even play snaps. It's an easy $1.4 million in cap space that can be a big help for the free agency and throughout the draft. And last, the Rams are currently having a lot of guys that are over the 53-man roster. And so to clear up some money for the free agency, I figured some of those guys could get released now, and you can eventually replace them with other undrafted free agents or draft picks, and possibly even bring some of the guys back, but later, not right now, afterwards, because these guys don't have dead cap, and each guy you release is almost $1 million, which is huge for the free agency. We're going to have a couple restructures here. Looking at the Rams' future free agents, they really only have Aaron Donald, Ernest Jones, and Kyren Williams over both 2025 and 2026, which is really good and puts them in a really good spot to spend. So with that in mind, they're going to be restructuring Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Rob Havenstein, and that'll clear approximately $40 million to use this offseason. So with that in mind, let's look at the guys that we are going to be re-signing. First up here, we have Kevin Dotson, our offensive lineman, or offensive guard, I should say. We're going to be re-signing him for a 3-year, $33 million contract. It's just, he was such a good player. He was arguably the best offensive lineman for the Rams last year. And the Rams offensive line was really underrated last year. Despite not having any big names, and despite having a lot of youth on one side of the line, they showed a lot of promise and actually had good PFF grades and didn't allow a ton of sacks and allowed Kyren Williams to get his job done. So Kevin Dotson, great re-signing. Next, we're going to be re-signing free safety Jordan Fuller for a 1-year, $4.5 million contract. This is after he replaced John Johnson. He kind of showed up, and he wasn't great, but he did his job, and that's exactly what we need if we want to win a championship. We need guys who can know their role, make some plays, and get the job done. And lastly, we're going to be using a second-round tender on Alaric Jackson. This means that if another team were to try to sign Alaric Jackson, they would have to give us a second-round pick. So either way, that's great for us. But honestly, I don't see someone doing that, which is why I think we just keep Alaric Jackson for that price of a second-round tender, which is a little over $4 million. So looking into the guys we're going to sign, we're only signing one offensive player at all. The rest of the guys are going to be all on defense. And that offensive player is going to be Tyler Boyd for a 1-year, $7 million contract. Now, Tyler Boyd is our immediate slot receiver. Puka Nacua could play some slot, but I think having him on the outside and then bringing in a guy like Tyler Boyd is really good. Now, Tyler Boyd, he wasn't as good in 2023, and he's getting older. But I think for a guy who has sure hands and for a guy who's a really solid run blocker, I think it could really help the Rams elevate to a Super Bowl. And then on defense, we're going to be signing, first up, Andrew Van Ginkel, the edge rusher from the Dolphins. Now, I did think about trading for Hassan Reddick here, but I figured that Hassan Reddick is approximately $5 million more per year than we're going to be signing Andrew Van Ginkel, and I figured if we traded for Hassan Reddick, we'd also have to give up a draft pick. So bringing in Van Ginkel here, he might end up costing more than this, but he's super underrated, and I just think having a guy like him across from Byron Young is an immediate just improvement to that defensive line. Second up here, we have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the safety from, multiple teams, the Saints, Eagles, and last year the Lions. Now, he was injured for most of the 2023 regular season. The few games he was back, he was really good, and then he had a really poor game against the 49ers. So with that in mind, I think we'd be able to get him for a 1-year, $11 million contract, just so he could try to have a good year and then ask for more money afterwards. The good thing about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is that he could play both strong safety and cornerback, or slot cornerback. So depending on what we do in the draft and depending on what we need and how injuries are affecting our team, having that versatility to play all three positions in the defensive back, I just think it's huge for the team right now. Third, we're going to be bringing on Kendall Fuller, the cornerback from the Washington Commanders. Now, Kendall Fuller is a really good zone coverage guy. And if you look at the Rams, he's actually pretty solid at both, but luckily he's really good at zone. And if you look at the Rams, they played zone coverage more than any other team in the National Football League last season. And Kendall Fuller's coverage grade was almost 83.0 according to PFF. And just bringing him on will immediately make our quarterbacks that much better. And lastly here, we're only going to be making a small signing of Pharaoh Brown, bringing in a backup tight end for a 1-year, $2 million contract. He was really solid for the Patriots, but he hasn't done much for his career. And I think that he'd probably be pretty cheap to bring on, and he would just be a really good backup tight end to have in case Tyler Higbee gets injured. And before we go into the draft, we are going to be making a trade here. So we're going to be trading a third round pick 3.83, for Washington Commanders defensive tackle Jonathan Allen. Now, I know you might be thinking that's not enough for Jonathan Allen, but Jonathan Allen is 29 to 30 years old, and any team that's going to be trading for Jonathan Allen is going to be taking in $15 to $16 million in cap space. And when there's a lot of good free agent defensive linemen between Chris Jones, Christian Wilkins, Justin Matabuki, however you say his last name, I don't think the market for Jonathan Allen would be as huge as it would be a couple years ago. So with that in mind, Jonathan Allen has had rumors of wanting to leave and go to a championship level team, and we'd be happy to bring him on, to bring him next to Kobe Turner and Aaron Donald and create just a dominant defensive line. And lastly here, we have the NFL draft, what we're all excited for. So for this, I'm not going to be making any trades. I'm going to be sticking where we are just for the sake of making it simple, because the NFL draft is crazy. So I wanted to make this as realistic as possible. And with the 19th pick, we're going to be picking the player that's going to be playing across from Kendall Fuller at the cornerback position, and that will be Cooper DeJean, the cornerback out of Iowa. Now, Cooper DeJean has some questionable man-to-man fluidity and man-to-man overall, but he is an excellent zone cornerback, and he's another guy with the versatility, just like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I think Cooper DeJean has the potential to play free safety, strong safety, and slot cornerback, and potentially, depending on the zone scheme that the Rams are playing, even outside cornerback. Now, really, this is just get a great player, get someone who's a great tackler, a good run stopper, and a great zone coverage, and a team that uses so many zone packages. So happy to bring him on. And with the second pick, second round pick for the Rams, pick 52 in the draft. We're going to be bringing on Edgerrin Cooper, the linebacker from Texas A&M. Now, I might be one of the few people that has Edgerrin Cooper as a first round grade, but to me, he's just a phenomenal player. He has potential as a coverage guy. He's a really good run stopper. He's a really good blitzer. He's athletic. He has what you want in a linebacker. And to me, at pick 52, it fills a need immediately, and he's just a really good player. So for these last draft picks, the Rams have 7 draft picks between the 5th and 6th rounds, and I'm just going to go through them and name the guys and the draft pick because explaining each guy would take way too long. I'm not going to do that to you guys. So let's just jump into it. At the 5th round and pick 152 of the draft, we're going to be picking Roger Rosengarten, the offensive tackle out of Washington, really good in the Senior Bowl. At pick 153, we're going to be picking Keith Randolph Jr., the defensive tackle for Illinois. He played really well next to Jerzon Newton. Pick 176, we're going to be picking Brennan Jackson out of Washington, being Washington State. He'll be an immediate great backup for us. At pick 190, we'll be picking Dwight McGlothern, the cornerback out of Arkansas. He has a lot of similarities to Trayvon Diggs, and he's a big playmaker, so having him as a backup is amazing. At pick 211, we're going to be picking Katan Oladapo, I believe you say it. The safety just brings good depth, was really good for Oregon State. At pick 216, we're going to be bringing in Jordan Travis, probably a fan favorite, the FSU quarterback. Since we're losing Carson Wentz, he'll immediately fill that role. And then with the 217th and our last pick in the draft, we'll be picking Kamani Vidal, the running back out of Troy. And just check out his film. He's a really good running back. And Kyron Williams has a big injury history, so bringing him on would be an immediate help. So if you compare the last year roster of the 2023 Rams to this current roster, it's a huge difference. At quarterback, we have Matthew Stafford. At running back, we have Kyron Williams. Wide receivers are Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Tyler Boyd. At tight end, we have Tyler Higbee. Our offensive line will consist of Alaric Johnson, Steve Avila, Coleman Shelton, Kevin Dotson, and Rob Havenstein. And then our defensive line will consist of Andrew Van Ginkel, Byron Young, Jonathan Allen, Kobe Turner, and Aaron Donald. Absolutely dominant. Linebackers will be Ernest Jones and Edgerrin Cooper. And then our defensive backs will consist of Kendall Fuller, Cooper DeJean, Jordan Fuller, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Again, another dominant group. I think this defense is elite. I think the offensive line is young and continues to improve every year. And I think the offensive weapons are huge. And to me, this Rams team, if they were that good in 2023, this roster should be good enough to at least make it to the NFC title game and potentially compete for that Super Bowl.